Greetings. Thank you for viewing this webinar. My name is Dr. Hilda Billups, and I currently serve as the Director of the Webinars Committee for TCUSPA, the Texas Association of College and University Student Personnel Administrators. You will notice we have changed the format for this webinar just a bit. This is one of our pre-recorded webinars. In these pre-recorded webinars, we seek to learn from experienced student affairs leaders. Our guest for today is Dr. Brandon D. Hill, who serves as the Dean of Students at McLeland Community College. Allow me to introduce our facilitator for today's webinar. Dr. Anthony Edwards supports TCUSPA as the Director of Research and as a member of the Webinars Committee. Anthony serves as an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Technology at Tarleton State University. Anthony's teaching assignments include higher education leadership, higher education student services, higher education finance, higher education policy and politics, higher education history, and the Comprehensive Community College. Dr. Edwards previously served as Director of Tarleton Online at Tarleton State University, a professor of biology at Panola College, Senior Vice President of Talent at the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, and Science Department Chair at Granbury High School. Dr. Edwards also served as a secondary science teacher in Fort Worth ISD and Huckabee ISD. Anthony's research agenda focuses on organizational change in higher education with respect to strategic planning, STEM education, higher education marketing, academic advising, and educational technology. Anthony has published manuscripts in the Journal of Higher Education Management and the HAPS Educator. In addition to chairing dissertation committees, Dr. Edwards supports student success as coordinator of the Higher Education Leadership Concentration of the Master of Education program in Educational Administration. We are very excited to have Dr. Edwards to serve as our facilitator for this webinar and are thankful to Dr. Hill for his willingness to share. I will now turn our webinar over to Dr. Edwards.
Thank you so much, Dr. Billups. Dr. Brandon Hill serves as Chief Student Affairs Officer and Dean of Students at McLeland Community College, where he leads a comprehensive student engagement team that's focused on advancing student success, belonging, and holistic support. With over 3 decades of experience in higher ed, his work spans financial aid, residence life, student leadership, conduct, and executive leadership, giving him a broad and practical perspective on student experience. He holds a PhD in Higher Education Administration from St. Louis University, a Master of Education in College Student Affairs from Azusa Pacific University, and a bachelor's degree in Accounting and Information Science from Greenville University. Dr. Hill has served in executive leadership roles as Vice President for Student Development at both a private 4-year institution and a regional public university before moving to a Chief Student Affairs Officer role at McLennan Community College, bringing with him a nuanced understanding of how institutional context shapes student support, strategy, and outcomes. His leadership's grounded in creating campus environments where students feel connected, supported, and challenged to grow. His work focuses on building systems that move beyond reactive support toward proactive, data-informed engagement, including early intervention strategies and innovative onboarding experiences that help students start strong and persist. A certified Clifton Strengths educator, Dr. Hill is passionate about helping individuals and teams understand and apply their strengths to improve collaboration, leadership, and student outcomes. He regularly facilitates, excuse me, he regularly facilitates training and strategic conversations that align with personal development and institutional goals. Throughout his career, Dr. Hills remained committed to developing student affairs professionals, strengthening campus communities, and advancing higher education as a pathway to opportunity and student success. And more information can be found on brandonhill.com. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Hill.
No, you're welcome.
All right, so let's get started with our questions. So, we've heard a little bit about some of your previous roles, but if you could kind of talk about, how you transitioned from being a student in higher ed to then becoming a higher ed professional. Can you talk a little bit about that part of your journey?
Sure. Yeah, I think, a lot of people in student affairs are really in the work because they had an experience where somebody helped them. And so they want to recreate that and pay back. I think my experience was a little different in that I felt like nobody was helping me. And when I got into student affairs, we were still in kind of an old model in the late 90s, and I wanted to do it differently. So I feel like I joined student affairs because I saw things that needed to be changed, particularly in thinking about residence life and in conduct and how we engage those things. So I've always loved being a student. I love the collegiate life. I've kind of worked in every department on campus possible. I started mowing grass as a student, and then I was the fry guy at lunch in the dining hall, and I washed dishes, and just kept enjoying the environment and wanted to see how I could give back in some way through making positive change.
And I believe you were also in athletics. Was that correct?
I was, yeah, track and cross country. Great story about that. I had not planned on running cross country. I had done so in high school. I was tired, and the coach found out I had run in high school and kept asking me to join the team for cross country before I was even a student. And I'm like, nah, I don't think I want to do that. And then we were living in the town where I was going to go to college, and the first day of cross country preseason, the whole team showed up at my doorstep at 8 a.m. And he's like, come run with us. I'm like, I don't have any running shoes, which was true. And he says, like, what size shoe do you have? And I said 13. He's like, that's my size. And he took his running shoes off and gave them to me. And you can't say no to that. So I ended up running cross country track indoor for him for 4 years. So
And I heard that you might have held some records too. So
yeah, I broke the 400-meter record in my junior year, and I held on to that for about 12 years. And then later, one of my students broke it, so I was happy for him.
that's actually a pretty neat story. So I mean, if you want your students to go further, right? And so that's outstanding. So from there, can you talk about how you moved from, just getting started and working in different roles to then becoming a leader and,
Yeah.
what that transition was like?
Yeah. So my first job out of college, I worked in the student accounts office, and did some work to help automate that with computers because I'd had a computer science degree. The financial aid office was working on um, trans changing, updating their system to power fades, if anyone's old enough to remember that. And I helped with that programming. And I was doing really good. I enjoyed it. But what I found myself doing was wanting to engage with students more outside of that office environment. And a resident director job came open, and I put my name in the hat. And a week later, I was living in the residence hall. And at that moment, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so got into a master's program. When I finished that, I thought I'm going to take a break. And then I realized if I took a break, it would be really hard to get back into student mode. So I jumped right into a doctorate at that point. So I had a 7 year period between graduating a bachelor's and starting my master's, um, but then moved forward into the doctorate pretty quickly.
And in terms of, obviously doctoral work,
Mhm.
it's a bunch of classes, you write a dissertation, but I think it does essentially give you a way of sort of investigating problems, finding solutions.
Mhm.
Could you talk a little bit about your doctoral journey and, what were some of the lessons that you learned that have stuck with you?
Yeah. So it was interesting. I got into a doctoral program faster than I was planning. I had a friend in a program that was about an hour from where I was working. And I said, I'm thinking about this. What's your experience? This was on a Monday morning. He said, oh, let's call my advisor. So we called his advisor, and he's like, hey, can you visit me on Wednesday? And I'm like, okay. Visited the advisor on Wednesday, and he's like, hey, we allow you to take 2 classes before you're in the program so you can test it out. We have a class starting Friday night. You want to come for the weekend? I'm like, okay. And I got into that class and I kind of froze, and I was like, I can't do this. I went home Friday night, went back Saturday morning with a plan to tell the instructor that I was going to drop out and wait till I felt like I was ready. And she would not let me drop out of her class. And so I just kept going through it and worked through it. Um, uh, I learned a whole bunch. It was interesting. My master's program in student affairs, I kept going, oh, this is why we do this. Oh, I could use this lesson right now. When I got into the doctorate, I started realizing, oh, this is why those other departments do what they are doing. And that was just really helpful in thinking about how do I collaborate with other teams who are having other philosophies, other worldviews, other languages, words for what they're doing, and being able to translate our work so that we could have strong collaborative partnerships. So I think that was a lot of what I learned in the doctoral program. It was also interesting because there were people in there who wanted to be in finance and people who were going to be faculty, and so had a lot of diversity of thought and worldview as we were trying to solve how to make this experience better for students in and out of the classroom.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So now you've transitioned, like you said, you worked at a private institution, you've worked in regional public, and now you're at a community college. What is unique, would you say, about working at a community college?
Yeah. You know, my journey's been interesting because, I grew up as a missionary kid in South
Hmm.
Africa during the middle of apartheid. And I realized very quickly that part of the way we oppress people is withholding education. So I became very
Hmm.
passionate about how do we how do we help our populace become educated? Because then when they're educated, they have tools, I think, to participate, but also economic mobility, and that's really important. So when I started in student affairs in 1993, students who had a zero EFC could come to our private school and they could afford it. They could take some loans out and they could make it. And through that journey of 20 some years in private higher ed, I started to realize, hey, those students I'm particularly passionate about, those that can't really afford to do this, are really getting priced out. And I think the wake up moment for me was that I was in an institution and we were looking at financial aid packages, and I realized that a student with a zero EFC was going to have to find $10,000 above and beyond their loan limits. And I'm like, that's not possible. And it's unethical for us to put students in this situation. And so I really felt at that moment I wanted to move into the public arena because I knew the costs would be lower. At the regional school, actually, we were finding some of the same things. We had students who could not afford to make it at the regional school, and so then I really started looking for what are the opportunities at the community college, and that's part of why I really enjoy working at the community college because we're working with students for whom this education really is a change in their lives and the lives of their family. And frankly, I can see it at the graduation ceremony. People are excited about what that means versus, oh, I finished this step in my life. Now what do I do? Kind of mentality. And so I think the community college really is the place where we're making the most impact on student lives. Of course, our students have the most barriers, whether it's financial or disability or family life, food insecurities, transportation. So there's a lot more of those things that we have to engage with. But when we're successful there, we make huge impacts on the lives of our students. Did I answer the question? I think I went on a tangent.
Well, no, you did.
Okay.
Like you, I've worked in some different environments, and I will say the time that I spent in community college, it was very clear the impact that it was having on those students because at least in the community I was in, most of those students weren't going to leave, and so taking the courses that I was teaching that got them into professional programs that allowed them to, earn a livable wage.
Mhm.
And so it was very easy to see how it was making an impact on students. Um, so now, like I said, you've been, student affairs leader for a while now. What are some of the challenges student affairs leaders are facing right now, and how would you recommend they overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably two major groupings that I can put things in, at least for our community college. There is a general sense of fear. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's political fear. We have students who are afraid of the government. We have students who do not have hope for their futures. They're afraid of the future, and so they don't want to make an investment in their future because they don't know what's going to happen. And so I think that that's pretty big. And then the second, I think, is lack of resources and lack of preparedness. Um, we're getting a lot of students who are underprepared. Um, we'll say something like, how many of you spent more than 5 hours a week doing homework last year in high school? No one in the room will put their hands up. How many of you have read a textbook in the last year? No one will put their hand up because they just are not, doing those things. And they get to college and they're expected to be doing 20 to 30 hours of homework, and they're going from zero to full speed. And then in the same way, financial barriers. Even though we're low cost, we still have students who are like, I can't make this happen. I can't afford the gas right now to get to class. So what can I do online? And so I think those are a lot of the barriers that really student affairs needs to be helping for students to overcome those.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting time. I think also when you think about, artificial intelligence and the impact that's having on, careers. I mean, there's a lot, in the news about that. And I think, it does make people wonder, uh, you know, which field should I go into? I mean, at the community college level, I mean, you all have the option of saying, hey, we've got these different trades or these different opportunities that you can reskill, that may or may not be available at the 4-year level. So at least at your level, you've got a few different options you can share with students.
So I think the way, that we engage that, I mean, as leaders, we have to have hope for the future, and we have to exude that so that our team is feeling that, so that they exude hope, and then they can provide hope for students. I still think regardless what the future is, it's better to be educated than not. If we get 10 years down the road and you're not educated, then you have to become educated. That's going to become harder. And so inspiring people to develop themselves, invest in themselves, even when the future is unknown, I still think is the right thing to do.
Well, like you said, none of us knows how this is going to play out, but I think we're all going to have to be learners. And so I think the skills that you learn in higher education, do help you to learn how to be a learner, and be able to adjust, when new conditions arise. Um, so, you probably in your role, bring on people to your team every so often. What are some pieces of advice you give to new leaders when they're, joining a team or taking a new role, like for their first 90 days?
Yeah, I mean, I think I say listen. Take a lot of time to listen to your team, listen to your colleagues, listen to the people around you in other departments. And what you're listening for is, what are their motivations? What are they trying to accomplish? I think it's really important to understand the history of the institution that you're at. Every time I've moved institutions, I run to the library and find the history book and the archives, because understanding that helps you to make, decisions as you're moving forward. And I really encourage not making too much change. The fact that you're the new leader is probably change enough. Um, and um, Listen and then make decisions after those 90 days. I'll tell a funny story about this place. I moved here. The person before me had actually had a different role, but I was occupying their office, and they had furniture in there, and one of them was a recliner, a nice leather recliner. And my first thought is, if that's in here, I'm going to sit in it and fall asleep. So I got to get that out, or people will accuse me of falling asleep at work. And so I took it out of the office, and within a couple of days, I heard people saying, Brandon got rid of the crying chair. I'm like, what's the crying chair? Well, it was a place where people would come and let their emotions out so that the leader could help engage with them and encourage them. And I'm like, well, I still want to encourage you, but if that chair is in the office, so we have the chair, it's in a different office now. But just that one little thing that I was doing to fit my leadership style, kind of put a little shock into the system about how I was going to engage.
That's a really, I think, helpful story about institutional context, because
Mhm.
again, it's easy to come in, as a person who likes to diagnose and see what's going on and what things need to be changed, and make some changes without knowing kind of the context of how things work in a department, you know. So, I mean, that's very good advice. Um, so again, I know we're saying we don't know how student affairs is going to, or how, you know, things are going to play out in the future, but in terms of the transition that you've seen in student affairs, I guess, how has it changed and where do you think student affairs is headed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I started in student affairs, I was in the private world, and I've always felt like the private, particularly religious colleges, are a little bit behind in things. I mean, we were still in loco parentis at that point. Maybe not legally, but the rules we had and everything were in that place. And so my master's program was a master's of education, and so I tried to work on pulling us out of in loco parentis and view ourselves as educators. Then the philosophy really has kind of moved to a counseling philosophy, which is how do we assist these students? And in some way now at the community college, there's a huge social work emphasis. If the students don't have their basic needs met, they can't do these higher levels of learning. And so I think at the community college level, we're going to sit there, I think, for a while, as the world is unpredictable and the economy is not looking great. I think we're going to sit in that kind of social work mindset. How do we support the students so that they can even come to the table uh, to learn? I really don't see that getting better in the short term. Maybe in the long term, but I think at the community college level, we're going to have to be prepared for that. I think also as costs rise, I think that's going to push more people out of the 4-year school. Certainly with the loan situation with a bunch of grad programs, um, people aren't going to be able to afford those. So I think we're going to have to start thinking about what degrees do we start offering at the bachelor's and associate's level to help prepare people to do this work. And so I think, advice to new professionals is have a broad mindset and listen to other people's worldviews. I mean, if I still had the same worldview I had in 1993 when I started, I would be in trouble right now. You have to keep listening and learning so that you can see where the world is turning. So,
No, that makes sense. So as a leader, you know, I think sometimes in order to pour into your team, you know, you've got to be able to, you know, replenish. So are there any maybe books, podcasts, resources that kind of help inform your leadership?
uh-huh. That's interesting because um, I don't know that I go to reading to help me relax. I've always been a learn while you're reading person. And the same with podcasts. I feel like when I'm doing that, I need to learn. So part of what I do to keep myself healthy, and then I'll answer your other question is I'm making sure I'm getting 8 hours of sleep every night. I mean, when I was a resident director, it was more like four. But now in this role, I'm I'm getting good sleep, I'm exercising. And in some ways, when I'm at home, I try to be at home, but leave my mind at home. When I'm at work, I'm fully at work. Be 100% where I'm at that moment, and I think that creates good balance. As far as what I'm listening to, I'll be honest. Right now, I'm spending my commute time listening to the audio version of Project Hail Mary, which I would recommend for everyone. I think there's some great lessons for education in there. But I love Freakonomics. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Stephen Dubner. It's a whole bunch of problem solving, and I think that's a lot of the work that we do. And then his partner, Stephen Levitt, has a podcast called People I Mostly Admire. And so he's talking, I would say, semi-famous people and their journeys. And I feel like you can learn from the journeys of others, even regardless of what field they're in. So I love those two podcasts. Um, as far as leadership, right now, the things I feel like I'm relying on a lot and trying to get other people to read. There's a book called The Ideal Team Player, and I think that work is important. And then a book called Radical Candor, which is really about how do you have the hard conversations. I think in student affairs, we're so much in a mindset of wanting to help others that sometimes we avoid saying the hard things, and we really need to do that with our students and with our teammates. And then there's a book by Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings. And it's a hard book. It's about when to make the call to stop doing something, or particularly when is the time to say someone's not fitting on the team well. And those are decisions that I think, particularly in student affairs, we have avoided, and we need to make those decisions. When do we need to stop doing a program? When do we need to stop doing things in a certain way because there's a better way? And I think they help us to have the communication skills to make the tough decisions that we need to do in kind ways.
Those last two are very interesting because I think sometimes we think those are hard conversations, but sometimes they can be freeing conversations. And that if you're sort of also helping someone figure out what's the best path for them, because if it's not something's not working, sometimes they know it as well that it's not working. But I think that it's I guess I've been around in higher ed long enough where things cycle. And so, I remember, 10, years or more ago, the big hot buzzword was strategic abandonment.
Mhm.
And I don't hear that much anymore, but maybe that it's kind of come back around at some point. But I think I've heard it said that, if you say yes to everything, then you're saying no to the things that matter, right? And so, I think it is important to have those conversations because we tend to pile more things on, and then you have to ask, are you really doing everything at a quality level if you're just adding more stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, here might be an example. We were looking at budget for next year, and I realized we had a line item to buy student planners. And I was like, why are we doing that? Well, they need it for calendaring. I'm like, everyone's using their phone. And we're spending a lot of money doing this. So let's buy like some generic ones. And if someone needs it, we've got it. But let's not spend that amount of money for things that I'm pretty sure ending up in the landfill. So, and that was kind of hard because people are like, well, we've got information in there. I'm like, all of that information is on the website. And so, letting go of things, but then that freed us up to have those funds to do something else important that is a current initiative.
Right. And again, you're able to take those funds to do something, that's a priority. All right. That you think is going to be a bigger driver towards student success. And when finances are a limited resources, that's really important. Um, and anecdotally, I find that most people who are paper planners have like they have a planner that they have a style, so just giving them a planner doesn't always work because the people who are paper people are very particular about how they do their planning. Um, but obviously, you've uh, been around enough to be a mentor to others, but I'm sure you had some mentors along the way. What's some advice that you've received from a mentor that you thought was helpful, or maybe what's something that
Yeah.
you learned that maybe you had to learn the hard way that you wish someone had told you?
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I have three people that I would consider my mentors, and one of them is already gone, but the first one, which was when I was early on, when I wanted to become a resident director, in the interview process, he asked me, what do you want to be doing 10 years from now? And I'm like, I want to die in this job. My goal was to have a heart attack at 90 in the residence hall. And he said, Brandon, you're going to have to go somewhere else. I'm like, but I love this place. I love the alma mater. It's like, people are not going to respect you until you go somewhere else. And at the time, I didn't believe him. I was resident director for 7 years, and then I started realizing, oh, I'm about to get a doctorate. I'm still resident director. I'm going to have to make a move, and that was really hard to do. But when I hit the new institution, I was able to make things happen, I think, really easily because there was a level of respect, I think, for the degrees, but also my experience that I didn't have at my alma mater because I think many people still saw me as a student. And so that was a good lesson. Second institution, um, I was in charge of residence life, and I had this mother on the phone just screaming at me. I mean, it was so loud. I had the phone out here and people outside could hear it. And I kept trying to answer her questions, and her pitch just kept going higher and higher. And so my boss saw it happening. He's like, transfer her to me. So I'm like, ma'am, I'm going to transfer you. And I transferred and hung up. And about 3 minutes later, he came out and he was like, she's doing okay now. I'm like, what did you do? And he said, oh, I just listened. And he said, the problem is you kept trying to answer her questions. You've got to listen. And I've actually used that strategy now. If someone's mad and yelling, I just don't say anything. I take notes of what they're saying and I wait for them to stop. And usually it'll be like 5 seconds and they'll be like, are you there? And I'm like, oh, yes, I'm taking notes. Is there anything else? And usually they're like, nope, I just want someone to know. Thank you. And that's it. And for years, I had been trying to answer people's questions and they didn't want to hear that. They wanted to express. And so that was a good lesson for me. And then uh, my current mentor shared with me that if you're going to be a vice president of student affairs, you have to have thick skin. It's like you care too much about what everybody thinks about you. And that's true, I do, because I want to be in good relationship with people. But if that hinders you from making the decisions you need to make, that's going to be hard. And particularly every decision you make as a leader in student affairs is going to make somebody not happy. There's always two or three sides to things, and you have to make decisions that you feel best for the students in the institution. And someone's going to be upset. And if you spend too much mental energy on that, it's going to become debilitating. And so all three of those lessons have been very helpful to me.
Those are really, really powerful lessons. I think, leaders definitely have to have thick skin because, I mean, I think about athletes, whenever they miss a shot, they're in the paper or on social media and people complain, they have to get up the next day and play another game.
Yeah.
And most of us don't have that level of scrutiny, but, the reality is, there are people who will question why you make the decisions you make. So I think that's really important. So, as we conclude, what are three skills that you think people who are working in student affairs or student services need to thrive right now?
Ooh. Um, Certainly, I think relational skills. I mean, we are working with students and we are working with our teammates. And then we have this broad sense of colleagues across the institution. And then we have the people outside. And so, and they're new all the time, particularly in the community college. I've been here 2 years now, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, all the students who came in are graduating. That was fast. And so we always have to be building new relationships with people. And I think we have to do that in emotionally intelligent ways. I also think we've got to have strategic skills. This is not a field anymore where you're going to do the same thing every day for several years. I mean, we come in to work every day and there's something new, some new problem that we have to think through, some new law that we have to engage, and how's that going to impact things. Um, I was in a meeting yesterday about trying to automate some stuff we've been doing by hand, and it's going to mean some people are going to have to let go of some things, but it is going to save a ton of time. So we move back to spending more time with students. So if we're thinking strategically, then we can have efficient and effective solutions to problems that we have for ourselves so we can spend more time helping students think about and engage what they're dealing with. And then certainly, man, I think resiliency. Man, and skills are usually something you can practice. I don't know how you practice resiliency. I mean, maybe you go on a long run or you let people punch you. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know how to practice this, but I think it's a mindset of, hey, when we fail or when things go wrong or when we have a hard day at work or something really terrible happens to a student, how do I pick myself and I keep going? And in some ways, if I'm as the leader, do not pick myself up and keep going, the people who are behind me are going to feel hopeless. So we have to have that resiliency to keep moving in the face of failure or daunting challenges. And I guess the only way to do that is to go through challenges. Oh, I can't remember who wrote this, but leadership book I've been reading in the last few years. It says uh, challenge is the crucible of leadership. In other words, when there's crisis, crisis is the crucible of leadership. When there's crisis, that's really when you shine as a leader, and it tests if you are a good leader. And in some ways, for those of us, that are in the chief chair, that is why we're here. We're here to deal with the crisis that comes and manage the team well to help engage that, and that takes resiliency because you never know when a challenge is going to come and when you're going to have to make some hard calls to deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. You know, nobody wants to go through bad stuff, but the reality is that's generally how you get tested.
Right.
Um, So you did mention something I thought was interesting. You talked a little bit about, looking for efficiencies and automating processes. I mean, you've got a tech background. Um, so it, a lot of times when we talk about AI in higher ed, we're talking about students and learning or teachers or faculty. But on the administrative side, are you and your folks there looking at ways that maybe you can automate processes that you all do to free you up to do other things?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of controversy around AI. My belief is if we don't understand the tools that are around us, how are we going to know how to engage them? So we've got to get in and understand them. And to understand them, you have to use them in some ways. I remember I was at an institution where we had this top achieving student and they were student leader who said, I'm transferring. And I'm like, why? And he said, I'm a marketing major, and two of the three professors don't even have cell phones. What are they going to be able to teach me? And I was like, oh man, he's right. Like you've got to stay up with the times in order to be able to lead. And so, I am concerned about AI. I'm concerned about the cheating aspects. I'm concerned about the economic aspects, the environmental aspects. But I don't think it's something we could ignore. We've got to figure out how to use it. So, I play with it. We're testing some things out. I'll be honest, I built a chat GPT bot to read our syllabi and tell us if it aligns with the WECM and ACGM. And we ran some tests on it and it flagged everything perfectly. I wouldn't ask it to write the syllabus, but it told us what was wrong. And that was a pretty cool process because it took something that would have taken hours and hours for someone to do and automated that. Um, I'm using it now for charts. We certainly are running our own data, and I can make an Excel chart, but they don't look pretty. And I drop what I have into Chat GPT and say make it look pretty, and it'll put graphics in it, do the colors in way less time than I can do. I don't have really access to a super strong internal AI yet, so we're not dropping student data into anything because I'm concerned about the privacy pieces there. But we are working on projects. One of the big things we're working on right now is we have Brightspace, and we're trying to automate in some way notification systems to our success coaches of when students start missing classes or failing assignments or missing assignments. I mean, the first time we worked on it, the data set was so huge it crashed my computer. It couldn't fit. And so we're using some tools from Brightspace and then some of our own tools to figure out if we can start predicting within 24 hours who's having a failure point. And I feel like we're having some pretty good success with that. They miss a class here, they get a D in an assignment here, and they skip that quiz in a third class. No faculty member is going to go, this student's having a problem. But we see that happen. And we reach out and we're like, what's going on? And usually there's something that's going on. We can help them before it starts to become failure points. So I'm hoping to be able to automate some of that a little more because we're spending a lot of time doing that.
Well, and again, I think this goes to how do we free up our time as people to do things that are innately human, that
Right.
are, high yield, best use of our time type things. Because again, if you keep a student from stopping out, that's a huge value, not just to the student, but to the institution. And so, um, but using that, coming through all of that data to find those types of correlations is something that would just take us forever to do. So I think that's part of the future of student affairs, and I think it has potential to be a really exciting time. Um, so thank you so much today
Oh,
for
you're
joining
welcome.
us
That's
for
fine.
this important discussion. Uh, Dr. Hill, I learned some of the things I learned from you include that joining student affairs often because somebody mentored you, but in your case, you saw some things that needed to be fixed, and so that kind of gave you a passion to join. Being a student, being a learner is important. Doctoral education can sometimes help you see the big picture, see how different areas of the institution work together. Community colleges create access to college for students that might otherwise be priced out. Students are concerned about a lot of things, including the future, the job market, the value of college, as well as financial barriers. Students are, and well, actually, student affairs leaders should exude hope for the future. So, in spite of the challenges, you need to project hope. Uh, Take time to listen to your team, your leaders, your students. Learn about the history of the institution, the department. Don't be in a rush to make change. Have a broad mindset. Listen to other perspectives. Make sure you get your sleep and your exercise as a leader, so you can recharge. Try to be fully present at home and at work. Resources that might be helpful include things like Project Hail Mary, Freakonomics, people I mostly admire, the Ideal Team Player, Radical Candor, and Necessary Endings. Moving to different roles, departments, or institutions can help people see you the way you see yourself, or the way that way you see your career going. Sometimes people just want to be heard. They don't necessarily want you to fix something. Have thick skin as a leader, and don't let people being unhappy prevent you from making the decisions that align with your values and the institutional priorities. Um, Keep building new relationships, acquire strategic skills like being able to adjust to change, being resilient. Remember that crisis is the crucible of leadership, and think about ways you can use artificial intelligence to automate processes and be more strategic as a human in the process. So with that, I'll say thank you again, and I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Dr. Billups.
Thank you for viewing this webinar. We would also like to thank Dr. Hill again for sharing with us. Please check our YouTube channel for more webinars like this one, as well as recordings of our other webinar types. If you've missed a webinar this year, we invite you to watch the recording. If you're interested in presenting, serving as a panelist for a future webinar Wednesday, or participating in a pre-recorded webinar, please consider completing the proposal form. The link will be included in the description for this video. Finally, the TCUSPA membership year runs from January to December. If you're not yet a member of TCUSPA, we encourage you to join us. Thank you. We hope you have a great day.